This will be all right?
Yeah, oh yeah, that'd be great.
Just don't want to get in anybody's way.
We got time, so there's no hurry. Great minds with Navy sport coats, that's what I'm saying.
I'm telling you. That should work. Thank you.
You bet. Go ahead and put yours up here. There'll be two bells, one at 10. Well, good morning. It's good to see everybody this morning. We have a beautiful day and another great opportunity to be together and to worship God. And we're thankful for everybody who's here. This is day 2 of our gospel meeting with Tim Norman, and we're so glad that Tim and Tammy are here. And we got an excellent start last night. He had a great lesson last night, and we look forward to the lessons today. And I'll say more later, but Tim needs time. So let's go to God in prayer, and then we'll turn it over to him. Our gracious Father, you have blessed us, and we are so grateful. You sent your Son. He redeemed us from our sins. He gives us not only forgiveness from our past, but he shapes us in our present to be more like himself. And he's preparing us for eternal glory. And we're grateful for all that you've done and all that you do to make this possible. We thank you for the Holy Spirit and for the perfect word he revealed. We're thankful for your church and to be a part of it. And we're grateful in particular for this local congregation and for our ability to serve together. We're so thankful for Tim and Tammy and for them coming our way for this weekend, and we're thankful for them. We're thankful for the kind of people they are and for the godly influence that they have had for so many years and continue to have. We pray for Tim as he speaks to us today that he will have wisdom and the things that he will say will be helpful for us, as we know they will be. Please strengthen us where we fail you, and we also pray for those who are unable to be here due to various reasons. Please bring them back to us soon. We ask all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Well, it's good to be back. Thank y'all who came out last night, and appreciate those of you who listened online if you couldn't make it. I understand sometimes there's unavoidable conflicts, but we're glad that you're here this morning, and we want to do a lesson on the work in New York City, which you guys have faithfully supported me in for the 5.5 years I've been there, and I can't say how much I appreciate that. And Tammy would say an amen to that as well. Thank you so much. So let me give you a little picture of the investment that you're making in New York City, of all places. Now, can you imagine ever living in New York City? How many of you can ever imagine living in New York City? I got one, maybe two. Well, I couldn't imagine it either, but it's where we live. And so it's pretty interesting experience, and I hope you'll enjoy this. What I'll do is devote about half the time to what it's like to live there, and then the other half to the spiritual matters, because I think you need both of those things as supporters of the work. All right, let's get started. When we came here in 1988, there was Tammy and I and our oldest child, Elizabeth, and we've expanded since then. We have Elizabeth So now, if I say to my right, is that to your left or not? Okay, so it is backwards this time. It wasn't, I got in trouble last time. I kept saying it the exact opposite. So my right, your left, okay. So to your left, no, my right, your left, yeah. To your left, that's Elizabeth up against the wall. Sarah's over here in the black dress. That's the middle kid. Bella's the oldest kid. And that tall giant in the background is my baby boy, Caleb. And that's the whole clan. So we're very blessed. We've multiplied abundantly. God's been good. Now, of course, the thing that really matters, you know what really matters? It's the grandkids. And we're so thankful. 5 girls. 5 girls. I don't really understand them, but I love them dearly. And I'm trying to be a good pop-pop. So we decided that we were going to move to New York City. I was in need of a church to work with, and they were in need of a preacher to work with them. So it worked out well. This was our house in Springdale, Arkansas. So what do? Well, we put out the for sale sign, and then we sold all cars. We haven't had a car in 5.5 years. How many of you can imagine not having a car for 5.5 years? It's strange, but it's doable if you live in New York City. So we loaded up the truck, and we didn't move to Beverly, but we did move to Manhattan. And I'll tell you what, driving this thing was fine except for the last 5 miles. Last 5 miles, I wanted to drive it to the side of the road and abandon it and pulling my hairs out, running down the street, because driving in Manhattan for me was a crazy experience, especially with a 26-foot U-Haul truck. But we did get there. So let me give you a few facts about New York City. Got to get used to this dual screen. So here we have the New York City metropolitan area is a population of about 20 million people. There's 5 boroughs, if you're not familiar with that. Basically, New York City is made up of the Bronx, the Queens, Brooklyn, Staten Island, and Manhattan. And that's where we live, is Manhattan. I work with the Upper West Manhattan Church of Christ. All right, now let's talk a little bit about Manhattan. First of all, it is an island. And you can see, if you look at you can see basically where the water is. It's definitely an island. It's 13.4 miles long. At its widest place, it's 2.3 miles wide, which gives you 23 square miles. Now, if you break that down for the total population of 1.629 million, if you break that down, that means there's 66,940 people per square mile. And then I finally figured out how to illustrate this. I don't know if you've been out to George and Lori's, but their back porch, it's probably about the size of this section of pews. That's probably about right. So imagine if you divided this section of pews up evenly and had 48 people in the pews, and that was your living space. That's how densely populated Manhattan is. And so if you were to be able to stack all of you guys, 48 of you on top of each other, and he give you each of that amount of space on your own, you still might think that's a horribly limited amount of space. But by New York standards, that's epic space right there. So what they do in the South, when they need more room, they spread. In Manhattan, when they need more room, they build up. So that's what Manhattan is all about. It's a concrete jungle. Now, what I want to do, if you see down there, it's not flashing, but we're going to look at. Yeah, see where it's flashing light. We're going to look up Manhattan from that perspective, so you'll know where we're going. So this is what it looks like at the very base. You know, anytime I was driving around Houston from the airport the other day, and I asked the guy that was driving us, I said, you know what I say when I see that? And he goes, what? I said, a good start. I mean, any other downtown area is hardly impressive that I've known compared to Manhattan. It's just buildings everywhere. So that's looking up, and what we're going to do is look from Midtown back to that area in the next picture. I went the wrong way. So that's that perspective. Here's Midtown looking down from where, so where we were looking is at the top now, and that's from the middle of the island. Now we're going to turn that around 180 degrees, and that's what it looks like from that perspective. Now just to give you landmarks, the green arrow is pointing to Central Park. Maybe you can see a little stretch of green up there. That's Central Park, and the yellow arrow is where we meet. So let me give you a little more perspective on that from a map perspective. That's Central Park. That's Central Park. So that's Central Park, and then this is where we meet. We're the Upper West Manhattan Church of Christ, and we meet there. We've lived 3 different places, and we'll talk about that. The first place was there. Second place was there, and the third place is there. So let's talk about life in New York City with that brief introduction. What's it like to live in New York City? Let's talk about the residences. I'll just kind of give you a brief tour of where we've lived. This was the first building we lived in. We lived on the 14th floor, or the ninth floor. Lived on the 9th floor, and you got off the elevator, you went down the hall to our apartment, and on the other side of that door was this vast foyer, or whatever you want to call it, entranceway, not very big. Now, if you go and look down the hallway from there, this is the hallway leading to the spare bedroom and the kitchen and the bathroom. And it was very narrow. Two people couldn't pass each other side by side, so they had to turn if you met people. Very narrow. This was our living room. Tammy makes any place we're at a home. It was a pretty neat view. I mean, here's the way it looked from one vantage point. That's what you're looking at your window, that's your view. And looking out the other window, that's your view in the living room. Here's a picture of our bedroom. It was so small that you had to turn sideways just to get on your side of the bed. Small, very small areas. The bathroom was pretty good size. Oh, I'm ahead of myself. The very first night, I woke up in the middle of the night and I saw this and I took a picture. And I thought to myself, you know, I may be nuts, but here I am under this Bella Luna, 9 floors up from Manhattan, New York City. You know what I said? When you get stuck between the moon and New York City, I know it's crazy, but it's true. Man, you got it, Lori? For those of you who are under 50 years of age, look it up online. It was hilarious what I just said. It was really funny. You may not get it because you're young. Anyway, I think I may let that one die. I think it's time for that one to die. So we had a nice sized bathroom, nice sized kitchen. And then we had some storage area in the kitchen. One thing you do in New York City is anytime you find storage space, you celebrate. You know, your perspectives have changed when you think about how your box spring is not really a box spring, it's just a box. And there's a lot of spare storage area being wasted in that box spring. When you get excited about that, you're starting to become a New York. So premium for storage. This is what it looks like outside the kitchen window. Here's our spare bedroom. It was ready for visitors. For 2, we could fit 2 in that arrangement. No more than 900 square feet. There wasn't a place in the whole place for a dining room table. Just didn't have room for a dining room table. Very little storage. And to get the place, I only had to put a $32,800 security deposit down. That's all. And for a mere $4,230 a month, you too could have rented that space. So that's life in New York City. Now, this is the view outside of our bedroom the master bedroom in that apartment. Now I had the great idea we needed to move after 2 years. And where we were moved to is right there. It's interesting. You could see the new place from our old place. And of course, then you could therefore see the old place from the new place. But I decided we needed to move. Why? Well, we may get a bigger place. And it had a nice outdoor terrace. And it had a gym that was good for me. And for 1 year, it was less expensive. We saved $700 a month and got quite a bigger place. So after 2 years, we moved here, this building here. Give you a brief tour of the apartment. This is looking in the aisle that leads to the exit right there. That's the way you got out. Turn it around 180 degrees. That's looking down the hallway. And that was very advantageous because you can see the bookshelves there. That's where I was able to put my library, and it worked really well. Now, the living room was bigger, but it was a cave. There was no windows. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, well, let me go back. Can I go back? Well, I'm not going backwards. Well, so how do you go back? Can you go back, Shane? You're there, okay. Yeah, there we go. Getting previews of coming attractions. Am I going back or not? I'm not going back over. Oh, well, never mind. So we had a nice big living room, but it was no windows. It was like a cave. And there was a place for a dining room table, but the kitchen was incredibly small, and the bathroom was incredibly small, but the bedrooms were incredibly huge. So it was nice for years, I guess. But after 1 year, this They wanted to raise our rent from $3,500 a month to only $5,700 a month. And that was more than we could possibly afford. It was interesting. We saved the money because COVID depressed prices, but the prices bounced back extremely well in a year. So we had to end up moving again since we couldn't afford this place, and now we'll catch up here. So what did we say? Out with the old, in with the new. This is where we live right now. The arrow suggests our current apartment is right there. We're on Broadway now, right across from an AMC theater. I'll show you that in just a minute. But that's where we live now. We're right by the Lincoln Center, which is an arts and entertainment complex, about 2 blocks from Juilliard. And we're paying about what we did originally for the first place, but we got a deal. We got a broker in our church who had this apartment, and he was able to get it for us. He was able to make an offer to us that we could not refuse. And so we're very thankful to be in this space. We wouldn't have gotten it otherwise, I don't think. This is looking from the porch, the balcony, to down the length of the apartment. There's Tammy in the distance in the kitchen. It's nice, and by New York standards, it's big. By Texas standards, it's pretty tiny. This is looking at it from the other direction. Again, Tammy makes the house a home. This is our bedroom, and it's not messy, believe it or not. Actually, what we had the idea was if we could turn our bookshelves back to back, and we could make a room divider, so we'd have a separate bedroom, so to speak, from my office and a sitting area. So that was, as we were doing it, the work in progress, and it turned out to be a very good idea, and we've enjoyed that. But it's a 1 bedroom. And what I came to discover is the ability to shut a door is a great blessing. Because we can take our living room and make it into a bedroom, and we love to have guests come and stay with us. But at a certain point, let's say 10 o'clock, it goes from the living room to the bedroom. But you can't sleep, if you're visiting with us, you can't really sleep in until 10:30 or 11, because at some reasonable point, 8 o'clock or so, it's got to go back to being a living room. But if you have that door and you can just shut it, they can sleep all day long. You don't care. But there's a value to that second bedroom, which we kind of discovered after we lost it. And that's why we saved some money. But anyway, we have a big balcony. By New York standards, that's a huge balcony. Tammy fixed it up real nice. We've enjoyed it. Now, if you look straight across from the balcony, you see this AMC theater. It's kind of interesting because about every 3 weeks they change the sign, the advertising for a different movie. So that's what we look at directly. This is looking up north along Broadway. That's our view looking north. This is our view looking south. And one thing that's neat about New York City is the seasons. We enjoy them. Here's the same view from wintertime. You definitely have 4 distinct seasons, which you don't have in the South. And those are enjoyable. And we have been able to be blessed to entertain folks. You can get about 40 people in there if you get them out on the balcony too. But we enjoy being hosted. It's cramped, but you can get a lot of people out there. It's just the way of living. All right, now, how do you get around in New York City? What do you do for transportation? Well, primarily you walk. And there's Tammy with her backpack walking, and there's Tammy and I walking. And you walk, whether it's rain, wind, or shine, you walk. And if you go to the grocery store, what do? You carry the groceries home with you, either that way or you don't buy them. I mean, you don't have a car, you can just throw your groceries in the trunk. You got to basically carry what you buy home. So that kind of limits what you do. You can take a wagon or take a cab, but normally you just carry what you got home. You can take the subway if you don't walk. Subway system is interesting. It's effective, but it's got its pluses and minuses. Here's a picture of me and my dad waiting for the train. Here's a picture from my oldest granddaughter. She's a lot older than that now. She's on the subway with my daughter Bella. And it gets very crowded. There's many times when you get on the subway and literally you're this close to somebody you have no idea who they are. But that's just life in the big city. So you can take the subway. You can take a bus. This is a bus. It may not look like a bus, but that's a bus. They get very crowded too. You can take a cab. Tammy and I both are comfortable going out and hailing a cab. I never thought I'd get comfortable doing that, but I can do it with the best of them anymore. And here's an example of being inside a cab. We fly a lot more. a lot more than we ever thought we would. There's Tammy taking a little break. We actually not only take planes, but sometimes we take trains, but we don't take automobiles because we don't have them. That's a train, an Amtrak train. I never thought I'd get used to riding Amtrak. That was just something you heard about that you never experienced. Now cars, why don't you have a car? Well, it's extremely expensive to have a car in Manhattan. This is one way that they store cars. The parking, they stack it. And if you get a monthly rate, it's only about $600 or $700 a month to park a car. If you don't do that, you have to park on, curbside parking. And that's a big hassle because you have to move twice a week for street cleaners, and if you don't, they'll tow you away. So you end up investing a whole lot of time in just taking care of your car, which I don't think is worth it. So we've gone without a car, and it's been okay, it's been fine. So let's talk about some of the disadvantages of New York City. First of all, it's a dirty place. I don't understand. In Texas, we'd say what? You don't mess with Texas. Keep it clean. New York City, they don't have that kind of attitude. In New York City, they just throw trash anywhere. It's a dirty place. It's crowded. It's crude. It's an R-rated existence. You hear cussing all of the time, and people could care less whether you're offended or not. A lot of times they're rude. And it's not to say that they're worse than us. There's just a difference between Southerners and Northerners, and this is the way I describe it. Southerners will talk as nice to you as the day is long to your face, and when you turn around, they'll stab you in the back. Northerners, they just stab you right in the front. They just, no pretense. So life is busy. We don't have time for that kind of stuff. It can be a dangerous place, but it's not really that dangerous. I mean, it's like there's certain places in Dallas you don't want to be at night, just like there's certain places in Manhattan you don't want to be at night, or maybe even in the day. But if you're careful, it's not so bad. It's a difficult existence. It's not the easiest way to survive. It's expensive. Has long, cold, dark winters. Somebody was making the point today, what's it like living in another country? And it is like a whole other country. It's definitely not the South. It's not what you're used to. It's a very secular, lascivious place. You see things that you don't ever want to see, and you see them all the time. God just is not a part of most people's picture. But that creates opportunities we'll talk about in a minute. Without repentance, this is what the future, the South, this is what we're heading towards if we don't repent and go back to God like we should. And finally, it can be an isolated thing. I mean, that's why I appreciate so much the invitation to come and be with you. I mean, this is home, and it's nice to come place where people know you, and you know people. It's Texas. I mean, this is home. We're native born. And so it's when you go to a far country for a long period of time, sometimes you feel a little lonely and isolated. Now, the other thing I was going to say about the difficulty of living there, I try to come up with a metaphor for what it's like living there. Imagine somebody takes their finger like this and thumps your forehead about 12 times a day. It wouldn't keep you from doing what you need to do, but it would just irritate you. And that's kind of what like living in New York City is. It's doable, but a lot of times it's irritable too. So those are the disadvantages. Now I need to hurry along here. Let's talk about some of the advantages. The first one, of course, is food. The food is amazing. There's a pastrami sandwich that's to die for. This is my favorite dish. It's pork belly in a red sauce, braised pork belly in a red sauce. I tell people, God forbid I ever get convicted of a capital crime, but if I do and I'm sentenced to death and I get a final meal, this would be the final meal. It's that good. Pizza is amazing in New York City. It lives up to its reputation. Bagels are just extremely good. There's a thing called soup dumplings. I won't describe them, but those are amazing. This is something really cool that you can get at the Yankee Stadium. Bacon on a stick. I mean, as a carnivore extraordinaire, bacon on a stick, that's a beautiful thing, baby. And then they have lobster rolls. And you might say, isn't it expensive to eat out? And it is, but it's expensive to buy groceries too. It's almost about a trade-off. But one thing about the portions in New York, they're huge. So usually if you buy one meal, you can actually get 2 or 3 out of it. I'll give you an illustration of it. Tammy got a hot dog the other day, and we had some leftovers. Now that one you laughed at. I like that. Laughter's good. One thing that's cool about eating out is eating out on the sidewalk. That's a fun experience. But what we especially like is eating out with our brethren and our friends and our brethren. We take every opportunity to eat out together. And it makes sense because it's hard to get together. It's just hard to do anything there. And so when we're all together for services, that we try to spend some time associating with each other. Some other advantages, of course, are cultural things. There are museums. There are sporting events. I could talk about these things, but I don't have time. You can go to baseball games. Now, look at the Jumbotron right in the middle. Who's on that Jumbotron? Well, looky there. There's Tim and Tammy. The guy you preach and you support in the field, he's been on the New York Yankees Jumbotron. Yeah, that's cool. My brother-in-law came and he wanted to tour the stadium, so we actually got to go down to the visitors' dugout. That was cool. There's a lot of arts and entertainment opportunities if you're into such things. That's the Opera House. This is the Symphony House. So much I could talk about, I just don't have time. That's Carnegie Hall. We finally got to go to that. They have free concerts all over the place. Free concerts, free movies in the park. There's just a lot that you can do for free. I don't keep up with American Idol, but apparently the girl in the background, it was a winner of American Idol who had been taught by the girl next to her as a member of our congregation. Oh, that's mine, Tammy. It's my phone. It's my phone in the bag. Tammy, it is. Please. Could you go get it, please? I know, but okay. There it is. Okay. That was to tell me to take my medicine. I've already taken my medicine, so sorry I forgot about that. When you silence part of the phone, it doesn't silence all the phone. Lesson learned. Sorry about that, sweetheart. I just was trying to get that to shut off. All right, so anyway, the lady here with the big face and the girl right behind her, those are members of our congregation. The one right behind the big-faced woman, Juliet would kill me if she knew I was telling her this. Remember that one? She taught the girl that's standing up, and she was from the winner of American Idol, if that's something to you. You know, there are celebrity sightings, which are kind of cool. Until just recently, my biggest celebrity was Al Roker. Not the biggest thing to see, but then about 3 or 4 months ago, I turned around and there was Bill Murray. So that was kind of cool. There are musicals. You have to, of course, be selective in all these kind of things, but that's Lion King. That was cool. There are seasonal things to do that are a lot of fun. I really enjoy the Central Park and the change of the year. Now I'm going to go through this very quick. I love flowers. And if you like flowers, New York's a great place to be. And Tammy's told me that I'd spent too much time on this, so I'm going to go through it quickly. If you like flowers, there are a whole lots of botanical gardens that you can enjoy. I enjoy taking pictures of them. This was my latest one that I really thought was cool, with a skyscraper in the background. And there's gardens, beautiful gardens. Beautiful gardens. Let me just get through this. That last garden right there was at the end of the movie You've Got Mail, if you've seen that. And so just beautiful gardens, and they have what they call the flower district that you can walk down. It's really cool. Lots of historical things. Statue of Liberty, Tammy and I climbed up the inside of that one time. That was a really cool experience. That's us in the crown of the Empire, the Statue of Liberty. There's the Empire State Building. There's the new building that they built to replace the Twin Towers, the One World Trade Center. The Brooklyn Bridge is really cool to walk across. Just a lot of things to do. Here's a museum, and that's the original Winnie the Pooh that inspired the writings. And that's Eeyore down below him. So that's kind of cool. There's just a lot of stuff like that. This is Tammy in the United States General Assembly building. And some of you may have been wondering, and I'm sorry a better job wasn't done. But sometimes people have been wondering who's been running things since Biden's been losing his ability to rule things. Well, they knew that there was somebody they could count on in New York City, but I could only take it for a while. There was a mini Oval Office in a museum. I thought that was kind of fun. They definitely celebrate Americanism. They have some different values than we do down here, and then there's parks. Parks are wonderful things. Central Park, especially, is just so helpful. I mean, you get in the crowded concrete jungle, and you need to get away, and Central Park is a great place to go. We live about 5 minutes walk from Central Park, and I can't tell you how much we love it. lots to see and do and to kind of get refreshed. It's interesting when you walk into the park, it's like a burden is lifted. And Tammy and I have spent days just bringing our tents and our seats, and we stay at the park. A lot of times what we'll do at the congregation was we'll just, after services, we'll go to the park and have a potluck. So it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of strange things to see in the park and around New York as well. So I thought that was strange. That was kind of interesting. A lot of this everywhere you go. Now, brethren, I've already talked about Tammy a little bit. But she kind of goes to extremes. I try to keep her in check. It's like they say about football players. You can't stop them. You can only hope to contain them. And she gets carried away. Bless her heart. We enjoy it. Right? Architecture is amazing. You have to remind yourself to look up all the time, because one of the best things you can see are above your eye line. And you can actually see those two buildings from our apartment. And Tammy and I both went for jury duty at this building. So you're not in the South anymore. You have some epic architecture. Going around town at night is really interesting. You get a totally different view. There are street fairs. Sometimes they'll just block off streets and you can have fairs and things like that. There's actually a nice beach in New York City. A lot of people don't connect that. So enough of that. Let's talk about the thing that outweighs all the disadvantages, and that's our congregation. So here is the Upper West Manhattan Church of Christ, save for two ladies of Indians that I don't have pictures of. Just take a moment and look at the congregation. You'll see all kinds of diversity. So that's page 1. Here's another page. So those are the people you're supporting me to work with, and I appreciate it so much. I love these brethren. They're an awesome people. Let me just make a few comments. First of all, there's different races, different cultures, different nationalities. We actually have representatives of 5 of the 7 continents. It's kind of cool. From different religious backgrounds. Our attendance now is about what it was before COVID. We got everybody back. You pretty much got everybody back now. I think 3 weeks ago we had 68 and about 20 on Sunday, so we're getting back to where we were. We don't have elders, unfortunately. A very spiritually minded group, very unified. What I tell people is what we have in Manhattan is what we should have always had in the South or in the church wherever. We divided over things that were thought by those that pushed it, they were thought of as liberties. And those of us who had conscious objections basically felt like we should have been respected and not have these things pushed out of love so we continue to work together. And that's the way it is in Manhattan. In Manhattan, if you're down here and you got 5,000 Christians and 5,000 Christians and 500 of them irritate you, you can kick 500 to the curb and you still have 4,500 people to hang out with. Up there, if you have 50 people and you lose 5, that's a significant percentage of the Christians in the area. They're just much more willing to sacrifice what they don't have to do to keep peace. And because of that, it's a unique environment and one that I can only hope would still be in existence in other places. They're very evangelistic. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The fields are ripened to harvest in Manhattan. I can't tell you how true this is. I don't have to go looking for people to study with. They come to you. And why is that so in such a godless place? Well, it's because godliness has gotten so extreme that people are starting to finally wake up and say there's got to be something better. And they come looking for us. And we've had some, I'll give you an example. About 3 weeks ago, somebody called me up and said they were interested, they wanted to be baptized. And they found our website and it looked like we were willing to baptize people. So I said, well, let's get together and study and we'll proceed from there if it's appropriate. So, last week, the week before last, I was out of town, but I got Bill, the other preacher of our congregation, got him to study with her, and she was baptized into the Lord. And there's some other examples of that I'll share with you, but the work is, I could stay busy and never get in the pulpit doing the work of an evangelist. It's just that cool. There's challenges. Every service you have to set everything up and break everything down because we rent by the hour. So don't take your PA system for granted. Like this right here. Don't take that for granted. Appreciate that. It was here last night. It's here now. It'll be here tonight unless the Lord returns or something catastrophic happens. But you don't have to set that up every time you meet. We have to do that in Manhattan, and it gets old, but it's okay. So what else? The capacity is limited. Though you only get about 100 people. We still have some room for growth. Parking is an issue because you got to park on the street, and sometimes spaces are available, sometimes they're not. And we need to get we need to get leadership. So let me tell you about where we meet. This is where we meet. And if you'll see the arrow on this side, that's the basement of this is what am I talking? Hostel. This is a basement of a youth hostel, which we'll meet at. And I'll show you what it looks like. First of all, they let us put banners out on days of worship. They even let us put up a banner in the lobby. Very kind of them. This is what the space looks like if you've never seen it before. It's very adequate for what we need now. That's looking at it from the other direction. So that's set up without people. Here's set up with some folks. So that's what a typical service would look like from the other perspective. And here's me preaching in the space. And here's the aforementioned things you got to set up. This is our PA system right there in the box, PA in a box. Basically try to reduce it to the minimal amount of things you got to unplug and replug. But you got to set up that stuff every time. Now when we have children for classes, this is the way you have your children's class. We don't have a separate space for it. You just block off by bed sheets the space you need. This is looking down at it from the top. It works. When you have a mother that needs to have a baby cared for, we create a space in the back there. We have a Tuesday night class. This is our Tuesday night class. And everything that we have, we don't have to take it off site every week. They give us space in a closet to store our stuff, so that makes it convenient. Now we're talking about evangelistic. In the summer months or when it's warm, every other week we try to meet to hand out flyers, and this is part of the group that typically does that. And so what we're taken to do is setting up a table. People disperse all kinds of different places, but we set up a table right there by the hostel. And we hand out various things. We hand out these flyers. We hand out what we call salvation cards. And the response is very interesting. I mean, you get anything from, thank you so much, I appreciate you doing what you do, to, I hate you and I hope you die. I mean, it's pretty much that extreme. But it's very rewarding. It's amazing what happens when you just share the Word of God with people. Find opportunities, brethren. I mean, if there's a county fair, set up a table. You might think nobody would ever even pay attention to you. You don't know that. And I'll give you an example. This lady that's sitting here on the far side, Yolanda, about 6 weeks ago or 2 months ago, we had a gospel meeting and we were handing flyers out right before the meeting started. And Yolanda walked by us and she said, "Are you telling me there's a Church of Christ that meets here?" And I said, "Yes, met there for 20 years. She was a member of the church looking for a sound place to assemble. And so she connected with us because we handed out flyers, and now she's placed membership with us, and she's a very great addition to our family. Baptisms, we've been blessed. Here are the baptisms. Here's how we baptize people. This is a portable baptistry which we've set up in our apartment. I just hope it doesn't burst someday because we'll be in trouble if it does. But that's our portable baptistry. One of the most disconcerting things I've done in a long time was when you drain that off with a sump pump. If you know what I'm talking about, you actually put an electric cord in water. Your whole life you're told never do that. But so far it hasn't been too shocking, thankfully. So that's what we baptize people in. And here's the baptisms that I've been involved with since I've been there. Trinidad, great member of our congregation. Here's Mark. Here's Erica, sweet little girl. Here's Ben. Ben and I talk pretty regularly. I owe him a call. Here's Brandon. He's fallen out of duty, but he was an interesting character. Here's Sadrach. That was an interesting story. If I had time, I'd share it. Here's Nelson. Here is this is Morelli. She moved. She was a great member. Here's Nicole. She still worships with us. She's awesome. Here's Matthew. Now you notice the other guy beside me, that's Bill. That's Bill, they're baptizing Matthew. Here is this, and these last ones, from here on, they've been done in the last 3 or 4 months. Demina was baptized. Joshua, the son of one of our members, was baptized. Curvy was baptized. She's a sweet young lady, and appreciate her very much. And then we had Annette, who was the one who recently baptized. She asked us not to use her picture for her, and we just honor that request. So we had some good baptisms since I've been there. And it's like not slowing down, it's speeding up. All right. Bill Robinson. Some of y'all know him. He's in the purple shirt. He's moved there. He and his wife, Judy, have moved. I've known Bill and Judy for 40 years. I was actually at their wedding. So we go way back, and he's working with us now. Sadly, his daughter was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer about 6 weeks after they moved, and she passed away about 6 months ago. And they've been having to deal with that, and some of you know the pain of those kind of experiences. But I felt like when Bill came to try out for us, I felt like it would work. There's just certain things. In order for you to work effectively with a preacher, there's certain signs. And this was a sign that maybe we could make it happen. I don't know. Kindred spirits. And here's Bill and his wife Judy in a more sober moment. It was kind of interesting. We had gone, one of our families from Nigeria had a baby born, and they wanted to have a special blessing of the child. And so they invited us to come, and Bill prayed, and they asked me to give some advice to new parents. And that was after that happened. And I thought that was really cool. A lot of people want to know, well, what's going on? What went on with you during COVID-19? I think we're doing well. So they kicked us out of the hostel on March 15th. So for a time, what we did was the remote worship through electronic means. There's me broadcasting, and here's our members listening. I don't know what y'all did, but one time, a couple of times, we had some, what do you call this? Zoom meetings. And this was at the height of the worst part of it. And we got together and we would talk for 3 or 4 hours. And some of those were the most meaningful things I've ever been involved in. You get really real in those kind of situations. But we started as quickly as possible to try to get back to worshiping together. We started singing in the park. And once people got comfortable with that, we found a place in the park and we started worshiping there. We got very first century. I mean, this was down by a river. So we started worshiping in August of 2020. Here's me preaching. The people that walked by were very surprisingly very kind. They would stop and listen. They would not be rude. Sometimes they'd actually tell other people who were being rude to be quiet. So people, you just never know what you're going to get, so don't prejudge. So we started meeting back in the hostel again in October, and then we got back to our Tuesday meetings in December. So now we're all back to normal again, operating. But that's our hospital experience. Each week what we try to do is put out a memo. We try to have handouts for class sheets. Sometimes I have sermon outlines, sometimes not. We try to mail out things that people may want. We broadcast our services on Facebook Live. If you ever want to know what's going on, just get on our website there and you can know exactly what's going on. We've got a web page that's been a great blessing. Whoever designed that, I think I know who did that. They did a great job. And then I sent out my report, which hopefully y'all get, and I appreciate y'all reading it. So let me draw it to the conclusions. Maybe have a time for a question. Here's some thoughts. It's expensive to live there, but when you think about it on a per dollar spent basis, it's probably one of the best investments you make. I mean, it costs a lot to have me there, but when I go out and do what I do, I have access to thousands more people than I would in other places. So on that sense, I think it's a very good investment. The advantages over other areas, the contrast between the good and evil is so stark that people are waking up to the fact that there's got to be a better way. It's interesting, within the brethren, the churches of Christ, there's us, and there's very extremely liberal groups, instrumental music type stuff, women preachers, and there's nothing between those. So we get opportunities that a lot of other places don't have, and they've been wonderful blessings to us. One of our greatest long-term needs, in addition to elders, is a bigger place to meet with ample parking that we can afford to rent. And the rent is very, very expensive. but we'd appreciate your prayers to that ultimate goal. Here's something I've learned. The church is not a white Southern American institution. Sometimes we tend to think that God's people look like us wherever they're found, and that's not the case at all. Not the case at all. We got to be very careful. I've come away from very careful. I think sometimes we don't mean to, but we bind opinions that we should not be binding. And I think sometimes we use unfair labels. Sometimes we call people liberal that maybe we disagree on a particular point of theology with them, but there may be a sense in which they're more conservative than you are. Just because somebody does not necessarily, you and somebody else doesn't necessarily agree on a particular point, it doesn't mean they don't have the right attitude towards authority. It just means they were mistaken for different reasons. And I think we have to be very careful with the labels we use to make sure they're fair. A lot of times, I like to use labels that speak to the difference as opposed to like liberal or conservative, but that's just me. There's no excuse for self-righteousness. You get this a lot. You talk to people about living in New York City and they'll tend to, what's it like living in that godless place? Well, this place we're at right now is just as godless. It's just in different ways. And so we need to make sure that we are humble as we walk before God and other men. We've come to experience that less is more. We probably own about 25% of what we did when we left Arkansas. And it's not a problem. It's kind of painful at first, but now we're at a point where we want to get rid of more stuff. All that stuff it can be a burden. Liberate yourself, let it go. Again, that's just something from off the top of my head, but it's been meaningful for us. I think the need for the restoration plea is as needful as ever, and what by that mean is we need to get out and start preaching to folks that the world needs to see Jesus' disciples united. So stick to the word, do what it plainly says. If it's questionable, leave it alone for the sake of unity and the salvation of men's souls. And finally, there's so much love potential. I can't impress upon you that God is love, and we need to love our fellow men with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves. And I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't tell you how much it means for Tammy and I to be able to work in New York City. It's growing on me. It's not growing on her quite as much as it is growing on me. But I mean, I hate to say this, and I know you probably won't appreciate this, but if I'm being honest, there's a little Yankee in this Southern boy now. It's not all bad. It's just not all bad. And so thank you for giving me the opportunity to work in a field for the sake of the gospel that I never imagined working in, but now I cannot imagine not having done it. Thank you all so much.